Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Real Life Sex. I am your host, Danielle Love, and I'm also the founder of the Sacred Sexual Energy Body of Work and Diabetes Dominator Coaching. I am here today with another amazing guest where we are going to talk about, guess what? All things sexual and intimacy sovereignty, having your desires and your pleasures centered, and releasing judgment around the ways in which we all have the sovereignty to choose our own relationship dynamics and paradigms. So I'm going to read you Yeside's bio really fast, and then we're going to get all into the details. So Yeside A. Davis is an intimacy doula residing in East Texas. She is the founder of Get Your Bliss, an organization developed to guide women of faith to an improved sexual, spiritual life through her private Facebook group, intimacy guidance readings, and signature program, Nectar. Yeside uses her psychology, writing, and ministerial background to aid her in her work as an intimacy doula. So thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited to hear about this intimacy doula work. How are you feeling today?
I am feeling great. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay. Okay, good. So I'm excited. I always tell people I don't really know you very well. We haven't had a whole bunch of conversations, so I'm getting to know you right now, and I'm very excited. So what I always want to know from folks, especially when we're having these open, honest, candid conversations, is how did you get here? So was your whole life open and sexually explorative and all of that? Or, you know, where did you start and how did you get here?
I always tell people I've been doing this my whole life. I was the person growing up that was the mediator with relationships. You know, back when three-way became a thing and we all three could be on the phone, and I'm listening to both sides and I'm advising or counseling or whatever. So I've always been that person. And I always tell people that I was having sex conversations before I even kissed a boy. Like people were just drawn to me for that thing. So really, I've been doing it all my life, although I did grow up Pentecostal.
Okay.
So
in your home, was this an open conversation, or was this like with folks that you were going to school with, or how
people I went to school with?
Okay.
In my home, we really didn't. Like I couldn't just go to my mom and say, hey, mom, I'm ready to have sex or anything like that. But as I got older, like into college, as a family, like cousins, aunts, everybody, we have open conversations, and we still do have open conversations. When we all gather up, sex is going to come up, and I'm going to be the ringleader.
Yes, I love it. I love that. And I think that's such an important point, is that especially, there's this like idea that women are not as sexual as men or don't like to talk about sex as much as men, which is like absolutely the opposite of the truth. And so I love for me, I have the same kind of experience as you. I've always been people go to me to hear what I have to say for whatever reason. They tell me things right away. Like I could meet you in the supermarket line and somebody's telling me about their husband's erectile dysfunction or something that like, I don't even know you, but I love that. Like, I feel like you love having that energy as well of being. I think it's because, and I'm guessing we're both very non-judgmental about other people's kinks or experiences in life. And how did that manifest for you? I mean, have you always been that way, or was that something that you conditioned yourself to be as well?
I've always, at my core, been non-judgmental, but like I said, I grew up Pentecostal. So it's like I didn't care if somebody was straight or not. That didn't matter. If I vibe with you, then I vibe. But I was growing up that way. You're taught to like evangelize and try to show them the light and, get them saved or whatever. And it just wasn't really me. Doing that fell out of alignment for me. Just letting people be themselves felt more aligned for me.
Absolutely. And that
makes my core. So now I'm just like out there, like whatever. If I love you, I love you.
Yeah, right. And it's not going to be your sexual preference or your kink that's going to make me not love you. That's right. Like that's not a line that I'm drawing in the sand, which is so important. So tell me and the folks out there who are watching, what does an intimacy doula do?
Well, I'm sure more people may be familiar with the term sex doula.
Sure.
But what I do encompasses so much more than the physical act of sex.
Mm-hmm.
So intimacy seemed more encompassing. So that's why I say intimacy doula, because I work with women to get through all the junk before they can actually fully enjoy the physical experience. And I focus a lot on self-intimacy. Getting to know yourself, being okay with yourself, not just being okay, but loving who you are, yeah. Standing in that, owning it, walking in it, getting your bliss. That's part of getting your bliss, yeah. Is self-intimacy. So that is my central focus.
Yeah. And so how did that, so for you on your own journey, because I was just speaking about this with somebody else that I was interviewing, you know, I love myself in that way, like so fully, so completely. I'm in awe of my body. I am like in total reverence of it, but that was not always the case. In fact, I used to have a fairly dysfunctional relationship with my body and how I felt about it. How about you? Have you always kind of had that full acceptance of your full body and the way in which it shows up in this world? Or did you have to kind of go through some healing to get?
I had to do some healing myself.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I've always been a curvier child, teen, woman, still am. So I had issues with that. And then apparently I was highly sexual and didn't even know it. And if you don't know about Pentecostal denomination, you can't wear makeup or jewelry, or women can't wear pants. Basically, you just think Amish as far as appearance, like, you know, you're very covered and stuff like that. So I was trying to do all the things according to the doctrine that I was, you know, the denomination I was in. And I had somebody in leadership tell me to turn down my sex appeal. And I was like, where's that? How did it get turned up?
Yeah, where's the dial? Yeah.
Because that's not how I felt. I felt very claustrophobic because I was trying to make myself fit somewhere that I didn't belong. So I'm feeling one way about myself, but apparently other people were seeing something else. So it just confused me even more because I was trying so hard to abstain, and that didn't work because I had several children out of wedlock. And so I was just so, I was having a serious case of cognitive dissonance. I had these two opposing beliefs. I was trying to do what I was taught to do. And then there was me, what I want to do. Yeah, so I had to, at the end of the day, had to choose me.
Yes, and that is exactly at the core really what I'm trying to highlight about all of this, you know, sexuality, spirituality, they're all so deeply intertwined. And what they are allowing us to do, if we're willing to sit with that as a reality of a portion of who we truly are, is it's pointing in the direction of our true self. However, what is required for everyone, regardless of our upbringing, is to willingly shed that kind of box that we're being taught to live within, these confines that, you know, whether it's religious, whether it's not even religious, it's just, you know, your parents or caregivers were just very, whatever, militant, army-based, it doesn't matter, whatever it was they had.
Religious, you have societal, you have cultural, all these things that are attempting to shape you into how they think you should be.
Right. And so how do you, or did you, if you're still dealing with it, or did you, if you've kind of moved past that in your life, deal with the pushback or the reactions from maybe parents or familial, you know, acquaintances or whatever they are, when you actually did begin? So your energy was, whoever was in that leadership already could read your energy, right? They could tell that you were a sexually energetic being, which is beautiful and amazing. And you didn't even realize that it was exuding from yourself. But how did you deal with the negative or the kind of trying to push you back in that box, if that did happen to you, while you were emerging into embracing your actual true self?
For me, it started with leaving that particular denomination. Leaving Pentecostal denomination was the first step. And so that's really where I developed the sense of knowing that sometimes I'm going to just be out here doing my thing and everybody's not going to like it. And I learned that whoever is truly with me, they're going to stay with me. And if they're not, they're going to fall off. And I just had to learn to be okay with that part. Yeah. Because instead of focusing on the people that I lost, I focused on those who were still with me and loving me regardless. So I just shifted my focus.
Yeah. And so you have an understanding, right? That some people are going to fall away, and that's okay. Not all relationships are meant to last forever. And I think that's part of the self-love realization. It's not, it really is. It's not you, it's me. And I'm okay with being me. And if you're not okay with that, I'm also okay with you not being here. That's powerful, right? Like, that's a dynamic shift in your life.
Yes. So I already had that understanding. And I went from Pentecostal denomination to a non-denominational church for a couple of years, and then it just wasn't for me anymore. But I tried, and then I moved to East Texas, and I was married at that time, and my ex-husband and I, we became members of a apostolic church here in town, and that was okay for a while. And then one day I just got up and I went to church, and I just knew it was going to be my last.
Yeah.
So that was my exit from organized Christianity at that point. So
altogether.
All together.
Okay.
So I was like, this is going to bring on a whole nother, this like, you're ascending. So let's deal with everything that everybody has to say. But because I had already dealt with so much leaving the Pentecostal denomination, the church that I was in all of my 20s, because I had already dealt with that type of thing, I was already ready because I already had that understanding.
And that's so beautiful. And for me, I wasn't raised with organized religion in general, but I still had to go through the process of understanding who I was, even if it wasn't through any oppressive means. I'm very grateful that I really didn't have to deal with that, but understanding pansexuality, being attracted to multiple, not just men, women, non-binary, I'm attracted to humanity, and really like becoming okay with that being who I am. And I don't need to have anyone else's approval for that to be the case. But for so many women, especially a lot of the women that I've interviewed for this series and also for people who are watching it, leaving an organized religion paradigm can be something like that they cannot fathom under any circumstance, even knowing that being within that paradigm is hurting them. What kind of advice could you offer to folks who know that they might be watching this right now and they know that they're in that situation and they'd love to have that kind of freedom and liberation that you've given yourself by exiting out of there, but they're afraid to maybe lose their connection to God, which I understand that you don't need a middleman. Like, we are all of the same cloth. We don't need to go to a place to worship. You can worship anytime. Do you have any advice for women, especially who might be finding themselves in that situation right now?
Yeah, I tell women, and it's something that even no matter what I say, they have to understand and know within themselves. But I do tell them that if you want to stay in religion, that's fine. But understand that when people say that it's about a relationship, that it really is. But normally that term, it's not about religion, it's relationship. It's kind of a blanket for just do what the Bible says. Like, you don't need one book to tell you how to live your life. There's things in you that are intrinsic. It's intrinsic knowing. That's your connection with spirit. Follow that. You don't need a book to tell you, not to, smack your kid in the face and break his jaw. You know what I mean? You just know that's not what you should do. That's not coming from a place of love. But I tell them, but if you are secure, you feel, you need to stay there for a while. You need to understand that you can love God and love to get it in.
Yes. Yes.
Whether you're married or not. So that's the big thing. That's a huge thing as women who want to love God, but they want to love, the person they're with, and they want to express their love with their bodies.
Yeah.
by coming together and consummating the relationship. And so that's a lot of it. They feel like they know how they feel towards God, and they believe they know how God feels towards them, but they're fighting that. They have cognitive dissonance because it's like, oh, I must not love God, because if I really love God, I wouldn't fornicate, So I tell them, start with just going within and seeing what you really, really want. If nobody was around to tell you that you can't do it or that you should do it, what would you do? Start there.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think
that's going to start the breaking. That's going to start them to thinking about all of the beliefs that they hold. Is this really me? Or did I just take this on and try to adopt it as my own?
Yeah, absolutely. So powerful what you're saying, because I also believe that sexuality and spirituality are one of the same. I believe that sexual expression is one of the most sacred forms of communication that we have as humans in this body, because I do believe we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And to be able to communicate that way using this vessel is so powerful and healing.
Yes.
And kind of just completely bucking that whole narrative of like sex being a sin or some sort of dirty, shameful act. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to just keep pushing out that narrative that sex is yours. It's sacred. You get to choose the ways in which you interact with it. And that is powerful. And anyone that's out there telling you that what you're doing is wrong, it's very helpful for you to just be able to take a step back and say, that's their perspective to carry. That's their baggage. I don't need to carry that around and just leave it at the curb, because it's damaging so many women and men too, truthfully, but women especially. So
I occasionally have the opportunity to work with men. So
I was going to say,
issues too. Yeah.
I know that. It's for sure. So as far as that goes, though, in the spiritual sense, have you found that exploring your sexuality and teaching other people ways to do that in a safe space has helped you heal from any other aspects of your life that wouldn't necessarily be seen as connected to the sexuality?
I think even though I became more open about my sexuality, being able to work with others definitely reveal some layers, and that still needs to be healed within myself. So yeah, I love this work. It's a give. I give and I still receive back.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
Is beautiful.
Yeah,
there's a sacred exchange that goes on with the work that both you and I do.
Yes, I completely agree. And so speaking on that work, what would you tell somebody, a woman who might be watching this, who knows that they're a sexual being, that knows that they want to explore that more deeply, and maybe even speak out about it more clearly without apology? Where do you start with that? Let's just say in a sense of loving your body, work that you can do with yourself. I mean, if that's okay, as an intimacy doula, like what kind of maybe practices would you recommend somebody get started with when they want to really own that sexual aspect of themselves without apology?
I always tell people to do mirror work. With music. It doesn't matter if you can't dance. No. Do it anyway. And I still do this every morning and every night, because I still have issues when it comes to my body, but I love it through its stages. I've learned to love it through its stages. And I will get in the mirror and I'm dancing like I believe my hips actually work and move the way they do in my head. So I start with that, and I tell them, talk to your body. Because you get out the shower and you do your little dance and you put on your oils or lotions or whatever. Talk to your body, especially those areas that you dislike, because they need the most love, because you probably neglect the area. And for most women, it's probably the tummy area, which we're very disconnected from, because we know that's our womb area as well. Take the time to really caress it and hold it and be like, I love you. I appreciate you for helping me bear children. I appreciate you for, whatever your body has done. If your body has survived sexual assault, I appreciate you that you're still here with me, that we're together. And I tell people sometimes, my body has been with me through abusive relationships, through being pregnant 6 times and having four C-sections. These are the things that my body has done. Therefore, I will not allow anybody to disrespect my body, including myself, because it has been with me. It's done the best that it could do with the extreme circumstances that I put it under, So there's this term that people use about a woman being a ride or die chick. Your body is your ride or die. Like, it's there with you. It's down. Like, I got you, So just showing your body love and physically touching it, not being in a hurry and just like, okay, now moisturize, but taking the time, slowing it down, and just loving on yourself with your hands, which then, you can go into self-pleasure, masturbation. But another thing I tell people, if they're open to it, another thing they can do is create a self-love altar.
Yes.
Which I have mine, yes. And I advise people to put it in your bedroom. I mean, that's my sanctuary, but wherever in your house is your sanctuary for you, put it in there.
Yes, you've just said, so it's actually really beautiful, because when I interview people about particular subjects, what I do, my brain is very, I have a Virgo sun, so I'm very analytical, and I pick up these threads that I see kind of weaving through all the interviews. And in each one so far, we have spoken about some sort of somatic self-care, self-soothing, touching. And I am a huge proponent. I have a video that I just put out maybe a couple of weeks ago called Speak Love Over Your Body. And if you are willing to open up that dialogue between you and those body parts, it's an actual physiological change happens. You are literally healing yourself. And I just love hearing you. And even that we've never spoken about this, but just hearing the same thing throughout this is so powerful. To give your body that gift of affirmation, appreciation, and love will absolutely change your life. So I love that you are saying that, and I 100% agree with you. I always bring it back to me having a chronic disease, and because I tell my body, my pancreas doesn't do its job the way it's meant to, but I still love it, and I tell it every day. I tell it every day. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for doing the best that you can do under the circumstances that you're under. And it changes everything. So thank you for kind of speaking on that, because it's so powerful. It's a practice too. And so would you, as far as me doing that, I do it every day. Maybe somebody that's not ready to do that every day, if they hired you as an intimacy doula, what kind of, could you give people who are really pragmatic, who are like, well, I don't understand, I need rules, because I understand that these things don't have rules. But some people need this, they need you to give them some sort of parameters to work with. Could you give that, maybe for somebody who's wants to do this, but they're like, I can't do this free for all. Somebody needs to give me some sort of guidelines. What?
Yeah, I could tell them, okay, so this week you're going to focus on appreciating your tummy, and then just move to different body parts. Yeah. This week, your affirmation is going to be X, Y, Z, so definitely it can be broken down and given in more, with more boundaries and rules and guidelines. Yeah. But I'm a free for all person too. I even use my ostrich, my peacock feather.
Ooh.
Yes.
I don't have any feathers, but you're also maybe the second person who mentioned feathers, so I need to get me a feather, obviously.
Yes, there's something when you're dancing and oh my God, get a feather.
Okay, I'm on it. Let me get to Etsy and get me a feather.
Get a feather. A peacock feather, yes.
Okay, all right. Okay,
and I tell people to write, of course, for the people who are who are more into journaling and stuff, I'm good for a journal prompt. I tell people to write letters to themselves, you know, because I used to love to get love letters, you know, back in the 90s when people still wrote love letters.
I was doing that too in the 90s. Oh, yep. Yeah, a whole bunch of love letters from a boyfriend from high school sitting in my closet. It's still fun to read them. It's not even.
They are so fun to read. Oh
and
my
reflect
God, yes.
on where you were back then. Whoa, I can't believe I was 14 years old and talking about all that stuff. Oh my gosh. Like, damn.
Yeah, so there's all kinds of things that can be set up for people to be able to do this in a way that works for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the reason I asked that, is because there's a lot of women out there. I mean, I have been coaching for 11 years, maybe not always on sexuality, but it comes up when you're in life or health coaching. Guess what? Part of life and health is sexual wellness. Yeah, exactly. Is that a lot of women find themselves, you know, whether it's their 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s, in their 60s, that they've been in a relationship for their entire life that, again, is foundationally rooted in that narrative that told them that they needed to, you know, find a man, get married, have kids, and then it's radio silence for women. Like that's the life plan.
Before I was married a short time. We were married for 3 years, so I've been still single longer than I've been married. But marriage.
That's okay. No worries. Take your time.
Like, everybody wants a call right now. Marriage used to, when I was in church, that was like the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he or she really loves you, they're going to marry you, and y'all going to be able to have lawful sex. You know, you don't have to worry about going to hell because you're having sex with your husband and not your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whatever. So you're having sex with a spouse. So I mean, that was the goal.
Yeah.
Let's get married. Me and somebody, let's get married. And now, being in the space that I'm in, people who knew me back then, they kind of find it shocking that marriage is not my goal.
Yes.
A long-term healthy relationship is, but I don't have to be married anymore, and I can express my love through sex and not feel bad about it. I'm not afraid of going to hell. I'm not afraid of God like smiting me with a disease or something because I'm fornicating. I'm not afraid of any of that anymore. And without that fear, I can live freely.
Yes. And that is so beautiful too, is that we don't need to have a piece of paper that tells us that we're in love with somebody. In my first book, I wrote about the fact that one of the reasons I got married to my husband so quickly is because he had health insurance and I needed it, and he had it. I mean, listen, living with a chronic disease, it's about $20,000 to $25,000 a year. Like, that's for my whole life. So it's like, of course, you know, we had this discussion openly. Like, we hadn't even known each other a whole year, but he was like, we need to just get married so I can get you on my health insurance. I'm like, I agree. Luckily, we have an amazing, healthy, generative, affirming relationship. But, you know, that wasn't necessarily my, the reason why I was getting married so quick wasn't because that wasn't the primary reason. It was mutual. And so I want to say that out loud too, because there might be women out there who have, I think the last statistic I read was about 70% of Americans have what is considered a non-traditional marriage, which means that, you know, whether it's like me and my husband who have practice ethical non-monogamy, or whether people are married for insurance reasons or green card reasons or any reason,
all of those things
that they choose as adults, which is the same thing we're talking about here. All of us adults have this autonomy, this sovereignty to have these conversations with another person and say, hey, this could be mutually beneficial. Let's do this because of these reasons. Exactly. And so I just think it's so important for women to really embrace that. You know, marriage doesn't need justify or verify your existence. It's wonderful, like you said, if you're in this beautiful relationship and that's what you desire and mutually that's what comes out of it. But for it to be the end all be all goal that validates your existence is very unhealthy. And I know that a lot of women are experiencing that.
It's very unhealthy because I was like, okay, in my 20s, cool. I'm not married, even though I thought I was ready to be married at 20. I was like, okay, I'm still, a young adult. Okay, we rolling in, we like 28. Okay, I'm gonna be a spinster. And so here I am, I'm 30. I was like, okay, so I guess I'll just get a few cats to be a cat lady, because I did not get married until I was 34.
That's fine. And like, I think that's so important to be like, and guess what? I mean, I have friends that are in their late 40s that have still never been married, and they desire that to be something that they get to, but they also have very successful careers and they know who they are and they love themselves. Yeah.
And that's what I tell people. Hey, if it happens, cool, but your marital status is not your identity. Yeah. But I know, and I can speak from my experience being in the church world, like you roll into 30, you're kind of like, when you get married.
Yep.
You're not married yet?
That's a damaging question.
It is. So that's as damaging as someone who is married. Oh, when y'all gonna have a baby?
Yeah. Oh, please. Oh, don't even get me started on that. I posted about that in July, and it was like I was just like, I'm unapologetically never having children. And
which is okay.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was something I had to even reconcile, even as healthy as I know that I am. I don't have any pressure coming from my family, but it would be questions like, oh, you've been married X amount of years. When are you going to have kids? I'm like, I'm not. Oh, I'm sorry. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I just don't want to be responsible for another human being's life. I have my own life to be responsible for and a chronic disease that I need to be responsible for.
Some people don't want that responsibility. Some people want the responsibility and they just can't. There's women with fertility issues that they do want kids. It's difficult if it even happens, so it's such a rude question. When you don't know, that question for me says, I assume that you even want to have children or something. I assume something's wrong with you, because you don't have them. You should have them already. Y'all been married, 2-3 years. Where's the baby?
It's all judgment.
It's all judgment. I always say, I do not like people in my uterus or my bedroom. And depending on your, again, back to religion, the way I grew up, you need to, your goal is to get married, be fruitful, and multiply. So you just have these babies until God says, okay, that's enough. I'm gonna shut down your womb, or unless you have a medical condition, and then you still feel like less of a woman because you can't have kids, and then you're having kids that you really don't want to have, but you're scared that if you're taking any kind of birth control, you're going to get cancer or God's going to do something else awful to you. It's just so much.
Yeah, it's a lot of.
And then if you just choose not to have children, then you and your spouse are selfish because there's no medical reason that you can't. Y'all just don't want kids. Like, who does that? That's so selfish. And I'm over here trying to figure out, but how? How is that selfish?
Yeah, it's just. Yep. And I think at the end of the day, it really just boils down to what we were talking about earlier, which was being able to get quiet, eliminate all of the external noise, even if the noise is coming from what you consider to be, trusted, whether it's a church, whether it's your parents, that's all well and good, but you need to get very close and intimate with your own voice.
Yes, and self-intimacy, yes.
And when that voice is telling you something that's in opposition to what your people are telling you, you then need to be able to rest in the awareness and the strength of your own inner voice and trust that even if it's in opposition, it's still guiding you in the right direction. And that's the most difficult part, I think, for a lot of women.
Yeah, it is. It's very difficult. A lot of women that I work with, they do come from a Pentecostal background or a church background, and so they find it hard to follow their intuition because you're supposed to follow the Holy Spirit, which is not going to always tell you the same thing as your intuition. So they don't even trust themselves.
No.
So we have to work on that as part of self-intimacy. Trust your intuition will, when you get to the core of it and you form a relationship with it, it will never lead you wrong.
Never.
Ever.
No. I mean, I would go as far as to say that your intuition is the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. And so then I ask the hard questions. Well, is it the Holy Spirit or is it the doctrine that you've been taught? You know.
And then I would say that the easiest way to answer that, again, this is me just kind of sharing my opinion, would be that if what you're hearing or feeling inside is in opposition to the doctrine's wrong and you're right. That makes sense, but to the women I work with, that doesn't, because they've been taught that they are wrong. Yeah.
The doctrine is right. And if there's opposing thoughts going on, then they are in their flesh and they're not thinking and letting the Holy Spirit lead them. So they already been taught that, no, you're wrong.
Yeah. So it's a lot of unlearning.
If you line up with the Bible or whatever, then you're wrong.
Yeah. And that's very difficult for a lot of people to, I would say that's actually one of the biggest hurdles that I've run into with folks who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s. They would even actually get to a point where they actually fully understand and realize that their whole lives they've been subscribing to a doctrine that has been not necessarily the right thing, but the pain of admitting that is so overwhelming that they actually will default to going back to that life of
confinement,
yes, and oppression and contraction, because it's difficult. So how do you help in that sense? Like, when, because I'm sure you must, especially coming from the backgrounds that you do and helping this, how do you find that you can help women say it's okay that you've been living in a way that is not necessarily helping you fully express yourself? It's okay that you were doing that. How do you help them reconcile with that?
I just, the first thing is I let them know that I see them.
Yes.
I reassure them that there's somebody, they're not the only ones. I was there. I was, when I left Christianity altogether, this was just in 2018. So I'm well into my 30s. And so there's this sense of that they feel like they've been deceived. So we really just deal with that because it feels like a betrayal. Yeah. And that's where the pain comes, like they lied to me. And then they feel bad about not knowing.
Not knowing ahead of time or knowing better.
Yeah. So we work with all that. But the first thing that people really need is validation. And so that's where I start. I see you. I know this path, and I'm going to walk it out with you because so much of it I had to do alone. So I know how hard it is to do alone. And so I'm there so that other women won't have to do this alone when they're breaking free.
Yeah.
Of whatever had them bound. So knowing that somebody's there helps them so much.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And that's where I try to be that person. That's what a doula does. We are guides.
Yeah.
We're there with them every step of the way.
And you hold that space for that transformation, the energetic need for that. And one of my favorite quotes is, and I think it's Maya Angelou, says you have to be able to forgive, and I'm sure I'm not saying it right, so please forgive me, but you have to forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know when you didn't know it.
Yeah.
Because that's a huge part of my entire life. Like when you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was doing that. But that's okay. Because back then you didn't know, and that's okay.
It's okay. They go through what they're essentially in the beginning, what they're going through is the grief process. Which I understand the grief process very well because of my psychology background. So, and I know that it's not linear, You know, you may have thought you've reached acceptance, but no, you're back over here to denial, you know, so, and that blows people's minds. That, oh, wow, I'm grieving. Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
Grief isn't exclusive to death.
No.
Death, because when you are breaking free, you are experiencing death in your life.
Yeah.
Death to those old thoughts, beliefs, people, because not everybody's going to stay. So I explained to them that they're going through the grief process. This is what you may experience, but it's okay. I'm here. And so when it dawns on them that it's grief, that helps, because people understand that, okay, I'm grieving. And they need to know it's okay to grieve, you know, because spiritual abuse is a real thing.
Absolutely.
And when you get away from that relationship, it's still okay to grieve the loss of that relationship. That's the same thing I would say to a woman who was physically abused. If she got out, but then she's going through all these emotions and stuff, it's okay to grieve the loss of that relationship. Mm-hmm. That is your right.
Yeah. And it's healthy.
Everyone has the right to grieve because it was a loss. Yeah. And that's what triggers grief, is loss.
Yes. And I think mostly at what we're talking about here is all a loss of identity. It's a loss of an old identity that you used to maybe not even fully associate with, but it was your identity nonetheless. And now you're saying, oh my goodness, that is not my identity, but you're going to lay that identity to rest. And it does absolutely need a grieving process. Absolutely. So no, that's beautiful. That's intimacy, and you're facilitating that. So, well, this has been an amazing conversation, and obviously I feel like we could continue talking. However, we're going to bring this kind of to a close. But before we do that, I want to, is there any other advice or gems of wisdom that you would like to drop on folks before we kind of bring this interview to a close?
I would like to share one of my, what I call bliss commandments that I teach. Ooh. And the one I want to share today is, I have the audacity.
Ooh, I like
Meaning
that.
Not in a rude way, but I have the audacity to shed things that no longer serve me. I have the audacity to allow myself to shine. I have the audacity to get my bliss.
That's right.
I have the audacity.
I love that. That is a beautiful bliss commandment, mantra, whatever you want to call it, but I love it. I have the audacity to get my bliss, period. I love it.
Period.
I love it. I love it so much. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, I cannot thank you enough, Yeside, for sharing your stories, your energy, your openness with me in this conversation. And when I do put this out with the, oh, there goes my low blood sugar alert. So it's time for me to go get some sugar. And it's time for us to bring it to a close. And for everybody out there, I hope that you got some gems from Yeside, because there was so much truth expressed in this conversation and so much freedom and liberation to be had for people out there who find themselves in these paradigms that are not allowing them to fully express themselves in their truth. So you see, this is it. People are trying to work with you right now. They're trying to, let me get on her calendar right now.
And it's on Do Not Disturb. I don't know what it's.
Listen, this is called real life sex, okay? This is real life, okay? There's no problem with that. But all that being said, again, just thank you so much for sharing yourself. And we're going to let you. Absolutely. And for everybody else, I really hope you enjoyed this conversation, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Real Life Sex.
Bye.